The distress signal, the medical research vessel Horizon's Promise, drifted silently through the darkness of uncharted space. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood on the bridge, reviewing the latest data from their deep space biological survey mission. Her crew of 150 researchers and support staff had been cataloging microbial life in distant nebulas for 8 months now. It was peaceful work, far from the conflicts and chaos of the populated sectors. Then everything went wrong. The first explosion came from the engineering deck. Maya felt the vibration through the floor before the alarm started wailing. Red emergency lights bathed the bridge in crimson as her officers scrambled to their stations. Smoke began filtering through the ventilation system, carrying the acrid smell of burning circuits and melted metal. "Report status immediately," Maya shouted, gripping her command chair as another tremor shook the vessel. Her chief engineer, a young woman named Lisa Torres, responded through the communication system. Her voice was strained and Maya could hear people shouting in the background. "Captain, we have multiple cascade failures in the main power core. Something triggered a chain reaction in the antimatter containment system. We're losing it fast." Maya's stomach dropped. Antimatter containment failure meant they had minutes at best before complete power loss. Without power in deep space, they were dead. Life support would fail. Heat would bleed away into the void. They would freeze long before they suffocated. "Can you stabilize it?" Maya asked, already knowing the answer. "Negative, Captain. The safeties are fried. We're venting the core now to prevent total annihilation, but that means we'll be running on backup cells within 3 minutes. Those will last maybe 6 hours if we shut down everything non-essential." 6 hours. They were 3 weeks from the nearest human outpost, even at maximum speed, which they no longer had. Maya made the only decision she could. Send out the emergency beacon on all Galactic Council frequencies. Include our coordinates, vessel identification, and situation status. Mark it as critical civilian distress. Her communications officer, an older man named Robert Kim, nodded and began transmitting. The message was simple and universal. "This is the human research vessel Horizon's Promise. We have suffered catastrophic power failure. Life support failing. 150 souls aboard. Requesting immediate assistance from any vessels in range. Please respond." The signal pulsed outward at light speed, a desperate cry for help racing through the emptiness. Maya hoped it would reach friendly ears. The Galactic Council had protocols for this. Help those in need regardless of species or politics. Humanity had joined the Council only 60 years ago. Still newcomers in a galaxy full of civilizations thousands of years old. But the laws were clear. What Maya didn't know was that their signal was being received by someone who had never heard of humans before and cared nothing for Council laws. War Master Vexen of the Crithian Empire sat in his command throne aboard the battlecruiser Crimson Talon, reviewing conquest reports from his fleet. The Crithians were a proud warrior species, standing nearly 8 feet tall with crimson skin covered in natural armor plates. They had conquered 14 star systems through superior military might and an unwavering belief in their own superiority. Vexon had personally led 7 of those campaigns. He was famous among his people for his ruthlessness and tactical brilliance. Victory was the only outcome he accepted. His sensor officer interrupted his reading. "War Master, we are detecting a distress signal. Unknown origin. They identify themselves as humans. The signal indicates a disabled vessel with life support failing." Vexen's black eyes narrowed with interest. "Humans? I have never heard of this species. Check our database." The officer worked his console for several moments. "No records exist, War Master. They appear to be a new species, recently joined to the Galactic Council. Very little information available." A slow smile spread across Vexen's face, revealing teeth designed for tearing flesh. An unknown species meant opportunity. No allies to call for help. No military reputation to fear. No diplomatic consequences when they disappeared. The Crithian Empire was always hungry for new resources and workers. "How many ships?" Vexen asked. "Just 1 vessel, War Master. It appears to be a civilian research ship. Their power systems are failing. They cannot move or defend themselves." "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." Vexen stood from his throne, his armor clinking with the movement. "Assemble the battle group. All 8 vessels. We will investigate this distress call personally." His tactical officer looked confused. "All 8 ships for 1 disabled civilian vessel, War Master? That seems excessive." Vexen's expression hardened. "I take no chances with unknown species. We will surround them. evaluate their worth, and claim what we want. If they resist, we will take them as slaves for the mining colonies. If they cooperate, perhaps we will be merciful. The Crithian battle group changed course, their powerful engines pushing them toward the coordinates in the distress signal. They would arrive in less than 18 hours. Vexen spent the time imagining what rewards the Empire would give him for discovering and claiming a new species. Perhaps a governorship of one of the conquered worlds, perhaps his own fleet to command. Back on Horizon's Promise, Maya watched her crew work desperately to extend their survival time. They had shut down all non-essential systems. The laboratories were dark and cold. Personal quarters were sealed. Everyone gathered in the central sections where they could share body heat and conserve power. Dr. James Park, the ship's chief medical officer, came to the bridge with an update. He was a tall man with graying hair and steady hands that had saved countless lives during his 30-year career. "Captain, we have everyone accounted for. 3 injuries from the initial explosion, but nothing life-threatening. I've set up a triage center in Medical Bay 2. Maya nodded gratefully. "Good work, James. Any response to our distress call yet?" "Nothing so far. How long can we hold out?" 8 hours now. Lisa managed to squeeze a bit more efficiency from the backup cells. After that, Maya didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what came after. James studied her face. He had known Maya for 7 years, served with her on 2 previous missions. She was one of the best captains in the civilian fleet, calm under pressure and always thinking 3 steps ahead. But even she couldn't solve a problem with no solution. "We'll make it," James said with more confidence than he felt. "Someone will hear us." What neither of them knew was that their ship's artificial intelligence had done something clever while sending the main distress call. It had also transmitted a second message on encrypted human military channels, a backup protocol programmed into every civilian vessel's emergency systems. That message included their exact coordinates, ship status, and a warning that their open distress call might attract hostile attention. Admiral Sarah Chen received that encrypted message at Terra Station, humanity's military headquarters 6 light-years away. She read it twice, her experienced eyes catching every detail, then immediately called her senior officers to an emergency meeting. "We have a civilian vessel in critical distress," Sarah told them, projecting the data onto the holographic display floating above the conference table. "Horizon's Promise medical research ship. 150 people aboard. Power failure, life support failing. But here's the problem." She zoomed in on the sector map. Their distress call went out on open Galactic Council frequencies. Anyone in range could have heard it. And they're in uncharted space far from Council patrol routes. Her tactical officer, Commander David Walsh, spoke up immediately. "We can reach them in 14 hours if we jump now, Admiral. But if someone else got there first, then we deal with that situation accordingly," Sarah finished. "I want the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet ready to depart in 20 minutes. Full battle readiness. We're not taking chances with our people." Sarah had been in the Terran Defense Navy for 28 years. She had fought pirates, defended colonies, and twice faced hostile alien forces that mistook human patience for weakness. Those species learned painful lessons about humanity's true nature. She wasn't about to let civilians die because someone thought they could prey on a helpless ship. The 15 human warships jumped to faster-than-light speed, racing toward the coordinates. They would arrive 6 hours after the Crithians. Sarah hoped they wouldn't be too late. Maya was studying power consumption reports when her sensor officer suddenly sat up straight at his console. "Captain, multiple contacts incoming. 8 ships dropping out of FTL now." Maya felt her heart rate spike. 8 ships was a military formation, not a rescue operation. Classification? Unknown design, Captain. Heavy armor, multiple weapon emplacements. They're taking up positions around us. We're completely surrounded. This was wrong. All wrong. Rescue ships didn't surround you. They approached cautiously and offered assistance. Maya opened the communication channel. "Attention unknown vessels. This is Captain Maya Rodriguez of the human research vessel Horizon's Promise. We are a civilian ship in distress. We request assistance under Galactic Council emergency protocols." The response came in accented but understandable Galactic Standard language. The voice was deep and filled with arrogance. "Attention human vessel. I am War Master Vexen of the Crithian Empire. You are surrounded and powerless to resist. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in immediate execution of your crew." The bridge went silent. Maya felt ice spreading through her veins. This wasn't a rescue. It was a predator responding to wounded prey. She looked around at her crew. They were scientists, doctors, researchers, civilians who had signed up to study alien microbes, not fight space pirates. But they were also human, and humans had survived worse odds before. "Lock down all internal sections," Maya ordered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Break out the emergency equipment. Medical supplies, tools, anything that can be used defensively. James, get your people organized. If they want our ship, they're going to have to fight for every corridor." Dr. James Park nodded and left the bridge at a run. Around Maya, her crew moved with purpose. They might be civilians, but they came from Earth. They had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them every single day with its weather, its gravity, its predators. That evolution had hardened them in ways the Krithians couldn't imagine. The first Krithian boarding pod slammed into Horizon's promise like a massive hammer. The impact shook the entire vessel. Maya watched the security feeds as cutting torches began burning through their hull. Within minutes, 20 Krithian soldiers poured through the opening into the cargo bay. They were massive creatures, nearly 8 feet tall, covered in red armor plating both natural and technological. Their weapons looked powerful enough to punch through reinforced walls. They moved with confidence, the assurance of predators who had done this many times before. But the cargo bay was empty. Maya had evacuated everyone to defensive positions deeper in the ship. She had sealed the blast doors and turned the corridors into a maze where numbers meant nothing. The Krithian squad leader gestured forward. His soldiers advanced cautiously, their weapons raised. They had conquered a dozen species this way. Quick, brutal, efficient. This would be no different. The first human they encountered was a botanist named Thomas Chen. He was 55 years old, had 3 grandchildren back on Earth, and was holding a plasma cutter normally used for collecting rock samples. When the Krithians rounded the corner, Thomas triggered the cutter and swept it across their path. The superheated plasma beam caught 2 Krithian soldiers across their chest armor. The metal melted instantly. The soldiers screamed and fell back, their companions firing wildly. But Thomas had already ducked into a side passage, using his knowledge of the ship's layout to disappear. On the Crimson Talon, War Master Vexen watched the feeds with growing confusion. The humans weren't surrendering. They weren't begging for mercy. They were fighting back with improvised weapons and desperate courage, turning their ship into a battlefield. 3 more of his soldiers went down when a section of floor plating collapsed beneath them, dropping them into a maintenance shaft where humans waited with heavy wrenches and determination. Another squad got trapped when humans vented atmosphere in a corridor, using the rushing air to push the Krithians back into a sealed section. "How many crew are on that vessel?" Vexen demanded. His intelligence officer checked the scans. "Approximately 150, War Master. All civilians. Scientists and medical personnel. Civilians are holding off trained soldiers?" "Yes, War Master. And they are doing it quite effectively." Vexen snarled in frustration and rage. This was supposed to be simple. He sent in more soldiers, doubling the boarding party. Overwhelming force would break their resistance. Instead, the humans adapted. They used the ship's fire suppression system to fill corridors with foam that stuck to Krithian armor. They created traps using laboratory equipment. One Krithian warrior grabbed a human woman who couldn't have weighed more than 60 kilograms. He expected her to submit. Instead, Dr. Lisa Torres, the engineer, drove her knee into his throat with enough force to crack his natural armor. The soldier collapsed, gasping. Lisa took his weapon and disappeared into the ventilation ducts. In the medical bay, Dr. James Park organized the wounded and sent them back into the fight. A young researcher with a bandaged arm refused sedation. "I'm going back out there, doctor. They need everyone." James wanted to argue, but he recognized that look, that stubborn human refusal to quit even when logic said you should. It was what got humanity through ice ages and plagues and predators, the inability to accept defeat. "Fine," James said, injecting the man with stimulants to keep him conscious. "But don't die out there. I hate paperwork." The young man managed a weak smile and headed back to defend his ship. Maya coordinated the defense from the bridge, watching camera feeds and directing her people where they were needed most. The Krithians were pushing deeper, taking casualties but advancing through sheer numbers. They would reach critical systems eventually. It was mathematics. Then her communications officer looked up with wide eyes. "Captain, multiple new FTL signatures detected, more ships dropping out of hyperspace. 15 vessels. They're broadcasting on human military frequencies. Maya felt hope surge through her exhausted body. Put them through. A crisp, professional voice filled the bridge. Horizon's Promise, this is Admiral Sarah Chen, 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We received your encrypted distress call. Hold your position. We're here to bring you home. The bridge erupted in cheers. Maya felt tears threatening but pushed them back. Admiral, we have hostile borders throughout the ship. Krithian forces. We've been holding them off, but we need immediate assistance. There was a brief pause. When Admiral Chen spoke again, her voice was colder than deep space. Understood, Captain. We'll handle the Krithians. Medical teams will board once we clear your decks. Stand by. On the Crimson Talon, War Master Vexen stared at his displays in disbelief. 15 more ships had appeared. These vessels were different from anything in his database. Sleek, angular, covered in armor that his sensors struggled to analyze. Their energy signatures were enormous. These were warships built for serious combat. An incoming transmission appeared. Vexen accepted it, expecting to negotiate. Instead, he saw a human female in military uniform. Her dark eyes were hard and unforgiving. War Master Vexen, Admiral Sarah Chen said, her voice carrying absolute authority. You are currently in violation of Galactic Council emergency response protocols. You have attacked a civilian vessel that sent a distress call. Under Council law, this is piracy. You have 30 seconds to withdraw your forces from that ship. After that, we will extract them by force. This is your only warning. Vexen felt anger surge through him. This human thought she could command him? He had conquered worlds. He was a war master of the Krithian Empire. I do not take orders from unknown species, Vexen snarled. Your people sent a distress call. We responded. This vessel is now Krithian property. You have no authority here. 30 seconds, War Master. Choose wisely. Vexen cut the transmission and laughed. These humans were delusional. He had 8 battle cruisers. Trained warriors. Decades of combat experience. Ignore them, he ordered his fleet. Continue boarding operations. If they interfere, destroy them. The 30 seconds expired. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her command chair, watching the countdown reach 0. The Krithians hadn't withdrawn. She had expected that. Warrior cultures rarely backed down from threats. They needed demonstrations. Fire 1 warning shot, Sarah ordered calmly. Magnetic accelerator cannon. Minimum charge. Put it 50 meters ahead of their flagship. The weapons officer nodded and targeted the space in front of the Crimson Talon. The magnetic accelerator fired. The projectile was a simple tungsten rod. Nothing fancy, accelerated to 5% of light speed. It crossed the distance in a fraction of a second. The kinetic energy created a shockwave that rattled every Krithian ship in the formation. On their sensors, it appeared as a line of pure destruction that could have vaporized the flagship if aimed differently. War Master Vexen watched the energy readings spike across his displays. A cold feeling spread through his body. That was a warning shot. A single weapon from a single ship, and it carried more destructive power than his entire fleet's main batteries combined. For the first time in his military career, Vexen felt something he hadn't experienced in years: fear. The reckoning War Master Vexen stared at his tactical displays, his mind struggling to process what he had just witnessed. The energy signature from that single human weapon was beyond anything in the Krithian arsenal. His science officer worked frantically at his console. Running analysis after analysis, report, Vexen commanded, his voice tight with tension. The science officer looked up, his face showing genuine fear. War Master, that projectile was traveling at relativistic speeds. The kinetic energy alone would have completely vaporized our ship. They weren't using explosives or energy weapons, just mass and velocity. If they had aimed directly at us, we wouldn't exist anymore. Vexen felt his confidence crumbling. He had built his reputation on reading opponents, on knowing when to press an advantage and when to retreat. Every instinct he possessed was now screaming at him to withdraw. But pride was a powerful thing, especially for a warrior who had never lost. They're bluffing, Vexen said, though he didn't believe his own words. One lucky shot with an oversized weapon. Our fleet is still superior in numbers and experience. His tactical officer turned from his station. War Master, perhaps we should reconsider. These humans are unknown. We don't understand their capabilities. A strategic withdrawal would allow us to gather intelligence and return with proper force. It was sound military advice. Vexen knew it, but accepting it meant admitting he had made a mistake. that he had underestimated an opponent. It meant returning to the Empire with nothing to show but damaged ships and dead soldiers. His reputation would be destroyed. His rivals would tear him apart politically. Pride made his decision for him. All ships, battle formation Delta, Vexen ordered. Prepare to engage. Target their lead vessels. Show these humans what real warriors can do. His officers exchanged worried glances but moved to obey. The 8 Crythian battlecruisers repositioned themselves, their weapons charging. It was an impressive display of military coordination, the kind that had broken the will of other species. Aboard the human flagship Valiant Dawn, Admiral Sarah Chen watched the Crythian ships maneuver into attack formation. She had seen this pattern before. Aggressive species that couldn't back down without losing face. Sometimes diplomacy worked. Sometimes you had to speak in a language they understood better. They're going to fire, her tactical officer reported. Energy weapons charging across all enemy vessels. Sarah nodded calmly. Launch fighters. All squadrons. Rules of engagement are weapons free but disable only. We're not here to commit genocide. Show them why they made a mistake, but let them live to learn from it. The launch bays of all 15 human warships opened simultaneously. From each bay, sleek fighters shot forward into space. 200 combat spacecraft deployed in perfect formation, their pilots ready for action. Commander Marcus Webb sat in his fighter's cockpit, running through his pre-flight checklist one final time. He was 32 years old, had been flying combat missions for 8 years and led the elite Razor Squadron. Around him, 19 other pilots from his unit did the same, their hands moving across controls with practiced efficiency. Listen up, Razors, Marcus said over the squadron channel. The Crythians are about to learn a hard lesson. Our job is to teach them without killing them. Disable their weapons, engines, and sensors. Make them helpless but keep them breathing. These aren't enemies. They're just ignorant. Let's educate them. His wingman, Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, responded with a hint of humor in her voice. So we're playing with our food before we eat it? Something like that. Stay sharp and watch each other's backs. Execute Formation Gamma on my mark. The Crythian fleet opened fire. Energy beams powerful enough to melt through starship armor lanced across space. Missiles streaked toward the human vessels in swarms. Railgun projectiles created trails of destructive force. It was the full firepower of 8 military cruisers, enough to level a small city or destroy an unprepared fleet. The human fighters scattered like a school of fish avoiding a predator. They twisted and turned through the incoming fire with impossible precision, each craft moving independently while somehow maintaining perfect formation. Their maneuvers generated G-forces that would have killed most species instantly. Marcus pulled his fighter into a turn that generated 14 Gs of acceleration. His inertial dampeners absorbed most of it, but he still felt like a giant was pressing down on his chest. His vision narrowed slightly at the edges, but he had trained for this. Every human pilot trained for this. Behind him, a Crythian missile tried to track his movement and failed. The missile's guidance system couldn't compensate for such extreme maneuvers. It shot past him and detonated harmlessly in empty space. That's one, Marcus said, lining up his first target. A Crythian cruiser had exposed its weapon arrays while firing. He squeezed his trigger and felt his fighter's railgun recoil. The projectile crossed the distance in milliseconds and punched through the cruiser's shields like they weren't there. 3 gun emplacements exploded in sequence. All around the battlefield, the same scene repeated. Human fighters danced through Crythian fire too fast to hit, while their precision strikes systematically destroyed weapon after weapon. It was like watching a surgeon work compared to a butcher hacking away. On the Crimson Talon, Vexen watched in horror as his fleet's offensive capabilities evaporated. His gunners were firing continuously, but they couldn't track targets moving that fast. Meanwhile, the human fighters hit exactly what they aimed at every single time. How are they doing this? Vexen shouted at his tactical officer. No species can survive those G-forces. Their pilots should be dead. The tactical officer pulled up biological data they had collected from the boarding parties. War Master, I've been analyzing the humans we encountered on their ship. Their physiology is unusual. Higher bone density, more efficient cardiovascular systems, greater muscle mass relative to body size. They appear to be adapted for high-gravity environments. What is their homeworld's gravity? The officer checked. 1.3 times our standard, War Master. They evolved under significantly higher gravity than most known species. That explained the combat performance but made their situation worse. Vexen was fighting a species naturally stronger and more durable than his own warriors. No wonder the boarding parties had struggled against civilians. Admiral Chen observed the battle from her command chair, noting how the Crithians were wasting ammunition on targets they couldn't hit. It was time to escalate. Capital ships advance, she ordered. Target their engines and shield generators. Let's end this quickly. The 15 human warships moved forward in formation. The Crithians finally got clear shots at them. Energy beams strong enough to vaporize smaller vessels struck the human shields and armor. The shields flared brilliant white but held. The armor, designed to withstand atmospheric entry on high-gravity worlds and the stress of extreme maneuvers, absorbed impacts that should have crippled them. One Crithian commander watched in disbelief as his main cannon, powerful enough to crack a moon, barely scorched the paint on a human destroyer. "What are these ships made of?" he screamed at his crew. His science officer checked the readings in shock. "Sir, their hull composition is incredible. The density suggests they're designed for extreme stress conditions. These ships could probably survive atmospheric entry on a gas giant. They're over-engineered by galactic standards, they actually were. Human warships were built to operate anywhere from deep space to the upper atmosphere of hostile planets. When you came from a world as dangerous as Earth, you over-engineered everything because your survival depended on it." The destroyer that had been hit returned fire. Railguns, missiles, and focused energy weapons struck the Crithian ship in a coordinated barrage. Shields collapsed instantly. Armor crumbled like paper. The engines went dark. The ship was intact and its crew alive, but it was completely disabled, drifting helplessly. 4 more Crithian vessels suffered the same fate in the next 3 minutes. War Master Vexen watched his fleet fall apart and felt panic rising. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. You surrounded your enemy. You overwhelmed them with firepower. You crushed them with superior tactics and training. But these humans fought differently. They moved faster, hit harder, and seemed to absorb damage that would destroy normal ships. Their pilots performed maneuvers that should be physically impossible. Their weapons carried kinetic energy that defied conventional physics. His communications officer provided the final devastating news. "War Master, our boarding parties on the human civilian ship have been eliminated. All of them. The civilians killed trained soldiers using improvised weapons." "That's impossible," Vexen said weakly. "It happened, War Master. The humans defended their ship with tools and medical equipment. They fought like they had nothing to lose." Vexen pulled up the biological data again and made a connection that turned his blood cold. He accessed the Galactic Council's planetary classification system and searched for Earth, the human homeworld. What he found made everything suddenly, terribly clear. Earth was classified as a Class 13 death world. The scale went from Class 1, comfortable garden worlds where life evolved easily, to Class 15, planets so hostile that nothing should survive there. Most species evolved on Class 3 or 4 worlds. The Crithian homeworld was a comfortable Class 2. Class 13 meant Earth was actively trying to kill everything on it. The data scrolled across his screen. Gravity 1.3 times standard. Atmospheric pressure high enough to be uncomfortable for most species. Oxygen levels toxic in pure form to many aliens. Temperature swings of over 60 degrees between seasons. Weather patterns including hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and the life forms were worse. Earth was covered in predators. Everything ate everything else in an endless cycle of violence. Humans had evolved competing with creatures that had natural weapons, armor, venom, and size advantages. Humans had none of those natural advantages. They just had endurance, intelligence, and the absolute refusal to quit. They were persistence hunters, chasing prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. They could survive injuries that would kill other species. They healed faster, adapted quicker, and their pain tolerance was far beyond galactic norms. Vexen was fighting a species that had evolved on a world actively trying to exterminate them. Every human alive was descended from survivors of the most hostile environment in known space. Their entire evolutionary history was about overcoming impossible odds. Another explosion rocked the Crimson Talon as a human missile penetrated their shields. Damage reports flooded in from every deck. They were losing badly, and there was nothing he could do about it. A human fighter buzzed past his view screen so close he could see the pilot inside. The pilot gave him a casual salute before destroying another weapons turret. The gesture was somehow more insulting than any battle cry. Marcus Webb was actually enjoying himself now. The initial fear had burned away during combat, replaced by focus and the satisfaction of executing his training perfectly. His squadron worked like a single organism, covering each other, hitting targets with surgical precision, making it look easy even though it required constant concentration. "Marcus, you have a Crithian fighter on your tail," Sarah Morrison called out. "He's locked on." "Copy that." "Watch this." Marcus threw his fighter into a vertical spiral, pulling 15 Gs while accelerating. His vision grayed at the edges, but he held the maneuver. Behind him, the Crithian pilot tried to follow and lost consciousness from the forces. His fighter spun away wildly, crashing into a disabled cruiser's hangar bay. "Show off," Sarah said, but he could hear the smile in her voice. "We're not just fighting them," Marcus replied. "We're teaching them. They need to understand what they challenged." Commander Vexen knew when he was beaten. His fleet was scattered, 6 ships completely disabled, the other 2 barely functioning. The humans had systematically taken apart his forces with surgical precision. They could have destroyed every Crithian vessel if they wanted to. Instead, they were deliberately disabling them, proving a point. He opened a channel to Admiral Chen. The human's face appeared on his screen, her expression neutral but her eyes conveying clear judgment. "We surrender," Vexen said, the words tasting like ash. "Call off your attack." Admiral Chen studied him for a long moment. "Withdraw all your forces from the civilian ship first. Then we'll discuss terms," Vexen gave the order. His remaining soldiers fled Horizon's Promise, abandoning their dead and wounded in their panic to escape. The human fighters escorted them back to their ships, making sure they didn't try anything desperate. As the last Crithian soldier left, Captain Maya Rodriguez walked through her ship, checking on her crew. They were battered, bloody, exhausted, but alive. Every single one of them had survived. They had held off professional soldiers with nothing but courage and improvised weapons. Dr. James Park met her in the main corridor. His medical coat was torn and stained with blood, both human and alien. "We did it, Maya. We actually held them off." Maya nodded, too tired for words. Around her, crew members were hugging each other, crying, laughing, the relief of survival washing over them. "How did we do this?" one young researcher asked. "We're scientists, not soldiers." Dr. Lisa Torres, the engineer who had fought off a Crithian warrior twice her size, answered, "We're human. We come from Earth, that's all we needed to be." Admiral Sarah Chen stood in her ready room reviewing the battle data. Her fleet had disabled 8 Crithian warships without destroying a single one. Human casualties were minimal, mostly minor injuries from high-G maneuvers. The Crithians had lost hundreds of soldiers and thousands more were trapped on disabled vessels. It was a complete victory, but Sarah took no pleasure in it. She had seen this pattern before. An aggressive species encounters humanity, assumes humans are weak, and learns a painful lesson. The question was always what came next. She activated a secure channel to the Crimson Talon. War Master Vexen appeared on her screen, his crimson skin showing stress marks and his eyes filled with shame and confusion. "War Master," Sarah began, keeping her voice professional, "we need to discuss what happens next." "You've won," Vexen said bitterly. "What more do you want? To humiliate us further? I want you to understand what you attacked today. Not so you feel humiliated, but so you don't make this mistake again with us or any other species." Vexen's eyes narrowed. "You think I need lessons from you?" "Yes," Sarah said simply. "Because right now you're confused. You're wondering how a species you'd never heard of defeated your battle-tested fleet. You're probably thinking we got lucky, or that we have some secret weapon you can counter. You're wrong." She pulled up a holographic display of Earth, rotating slowly between them. "This is our homeworld. Take a good look at it." Vexen studied the blue and green planet with suspicion. "It looks like a standard garden world. Water, oxygen, moderate climate. Look deeper. Check the environmental data." Vexen's expression changed as he read the information. His eyes widened with each detail. "This gravity. No species evolves intelligence under such conditions. The energy requirements make tool use nearly impossible. And yet here we are," Sarah said. "That gravity you see? We grew up in it. Every human you fought today has lived their entire life under 1.3 times what you consider normal. Our bones are denser. Our muscles are stronger. Our cardiovascular systems are more efficient. When we train, We often increase gravity further. She pulled up more data. The temperature swings on Earth are extreme. The weather patterns include storms that can destroy cities. The tectonic activity means the ground literally moves beneath our feet. We have predators that hunt in packs, venom that can kill in minutes, and diseases that have killed millions of us throughout history. Vexon stared at the data, his mind reeling. You evolved on a death world. Class 13. Death world, Sarah corrected. Everything on Earth is trying to kill everything else. Humans survive because we're stubborn. We don't quit. We adapt, we overcome. Those civilians you attacked? They're researchers and doctors who grew up swimming in oceans full of predators, climbing mountains in thin air, surviving in deserts and frozen tundras. She leaned forward. You didn't attack a weak species, War Master. You attacked survivors of the harshest training ground in the known galaxy. Our entire evolutionary history is about refusing to die when everything says we should. Vexen felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, genuine respect for an opponent. Why didn't you destroy us? You could have. Because we're not conquerors, Sarah replied. We're explorers, researchers, defenders. We only fight when forced to. You attacked our people. So we responded with overwhelming force to protect them. But we don't kill when we can disable. We don't destroy when we can educate. She gestured to the disabled Crithian ships floating in space. Your crews are alive. Your ships can be repaired. You'll return to your empire with a story. What you do with that story is up to you. You can seek revenge and come back with more ships. If you do, we'll disable those too. Or you can learn from this and approach us differently next time. You're offering us a choice. I'm offering you knowledge. Now you know what humans are, what we're capable of, what we'll do to protect our own. Use that information wisely. Vexen sat in silence for several moments, processing everything. His entire worldview had been shattered in a few hours. The Crithian Empire had built its power on military might, on the assumption that strength equaled superiority. These humans had proven that wrong. What do you want from us? Vexen finally asked. Leave this sector. Return to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them humans are not easy prey. Tell them we'll defend ourselves and others who need protection. And tell them that if they want to meet us again, they should come in peace, not war. Sarah ended the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. Send medical teams to Horizon's Promise. Get their wounded treated and their ship operational. And send engineering teams to the Crithian vessels. Stabilize their life support and make sure they can limp home. Commander Walsh looked surprised. We're helping them after they attacked us? We're showing them who we are, Sarah replied. They thought we were weak prey. We proved we're not. Now we show them we're not monsters either. Sometimes the best way to end a war is to refuse to be the enemy they expect. On Horizon's Promise, Captain Maya Rodriguez stood in the repaired bridge, watching human engineering teams work on her damaged systems. Medical personnel moved through the corridors, treating injured crew members with efficiency and compassion. Dr. James Park joined her, his arm in a sling but his spirit unbroken. Admiral Chen's people are impressive. They've already restored main power. We'll be able to limp back to Terra Station under our own power. Maya nodded, still processing everything that had happened. We held them off, James. 150 civilians held off trained soldiers. We're human, James said simply. We come from Earth. We don't know how to quit. 3 days later, the Crithian fleet limped away from the sector, their ships barely functional, but their crews alive. War Master Vexen sat in his command chair, staring at the data about Earth and humanity that he had compiled. His officers waited nervously for his reaction. They expected rage, demands for revenge, plans for a larger assault. Instead, Vexen made a decision that would change Crithian history. When we return to the Empire, I will recommend that the Council open diplomatic channels with humanity, Vexen announced. These are not prey. They are potential allies or dangerous enemies. We must choose which carefully. His tactical officer looked shocked. You would seek alliance with those who defeated us? I would seek understanding with those who could have destroyed us but chose mercy instead, Vexen corrected. That shows strength of a different kind. The kind the Empire needs to learn. The Crithian ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying their wounded pride and new knowledge back home. Admiral Sarah Chen watched them go from the bridge of Valiant Dawn. She had done what she came to do. The civilians were safe. The aggressors had been stopped. and perhaps, just perhaps, a new relationship had been forged from conflict. "Admiral," her communications officer called out. "We're receiving messages from multiple sources. Word of the engagement is spreading across the Galactic Council networks. Species are asking about humanity, about Earth, about our capabilities." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Good, let them ask. Let them wonder. And let them know that humans will defend themselves and others. We're not looking for war, but we're not afraid of it either." She turned to her crew. "Set course for Terra Station. Let's bring our people home." The Third Expeditionary Fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind disabled Crithian ships and a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were nothing like anyone expected. In the weeks that followed, the story of the battle spread. Other species learned about Earth, about the humans who evolved on a death world and carried that resilience into space. Some saw opportunity for alliance. Others saw potential threat. But all of them understood one simple truth. Humans were not prey. They were survivors, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again. Captain Maya Rodriguez and her crew made it safely back to Terra Station, where they received commendations for their courage under fire. The Horizon's Promise was repaired and returned to its mission of exploring and researching the cosmos. Dr. James Park wrote a paper about human physiological advantages in combat situations, which became required reading in Galactic Council military academies. Commander Marcus Webb and his squadron became minor celebrities, their combat footage studied by pilots across multiple species, and War Master Vexen kept his word. The Crithian Empire opened diplomatic channels with humanity, leading to a cautious but growing relationship based on mutual respect rather than conquest. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had proven themselves not through aggression, but through the simple act of refusing to be victims. They had defended their own, shown mercy to their attackers, and demonstrated that true strength came from resilience, adaptation, and the courage to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The distress signal that had started everything became a turning point. What began as a cry for help ended as a declaration: humanity was here to stay, and anyone who threatened them would learn the hard way why Deathworlders should never be underestimated.